Welcome back to Bullet Basics, everybody. Today we've got another comparison video for you. Obviously these aren't the most exciting videos, but they are very useful. People have commented that they really enjoy these types of videos because they can see a side-by-side comparison that's pretty close up, as well as kind of a caliper measurement, a rough one anyway. We're not going to get anywhere super exact. We are going to be skipping Norm again. We just don't have time for his shenanigans that he's always doing, so we're going to skip him on these types of videos. We reserve him more for the other types of videos. So as you can see here, we've got the Taurus TX22 and the Smith & Wesson M&P 22 Compact. These are very different sizes, but it is useful to look at because I know when I was looking to get a 22 pistol like this, I was looking even between the different sizes. Because generally speaking, at least the way that we look at these is these are more plinking type guns, not usually carry. And so if you're going to get a plinking gun, it doesn't really matter what size it is. And so comparing across different sizes is actually very common. Before we get into the comparison of the guns themselves, we'll actually do a comparison of the magazines here. Oh, what is this? Norm strikes again. Norm says he won't be silenced. Did you put one here too? I can only imagine. Of course you did. And subscribe and comment. There you have it. Norm says he will not be silenced and you should subscribe and comment. I agree with Norm. Probably not the delivery method that we should use. Okay, so let's take a look at the magazines. As you can see here, Taurus magazines are taller and they are wider. The M&P magazines are actually really small. The base plate obviously is fairly big to fit properly on the bottom, but the magazines are very small in comparison. So to just give a rough size comparison, we'll actually take the Taurus and we'll put it behind the M&P, and we'll try to line them up the best that we can here. So we're going to line up kind of where your hand would hit in the back here. As you can see, they're almost the same length. The Taurus is just slightly longer and it's slightly taller actually, as you can see in the slide. And then the grip is significantly longer there, as you can see that. By the way, the saga continues on filming in random places. It's just going to continue until our house is built. That is just the way that it is. So you get to enjoy this random weird blanket. Okay, so as you can see there, the trigger's hitting virtually the same spot. The trigger guard on the Taurus is much larger than the M&P, which is kind of cool. I prefer that generally, but it really just doesn't matter unless you're going to be using gloves, and then the Taurus is much more appealing. So if we're going to line these up here at where your hand would hit again, the Taurus is slightly taller, as you can see there, and it's much taller in the grip, and then it's wider as well, significantly wider. Okay, so those are the rough measurements. We'll get into some specific measurements now, but those are the kind of that gets you into the general zone. We got the caliper here. We're going to measure a number of them. We're going to measure the kind of the length and width and all that kind of good stuff of the grip, as well as from the trigger here to the back of the grip, and a number of other good measurements. So let's get going with this. As you can see here, kind of at the widest part of the grip, it's basically 2 inches, almost exactly. It narrows only slightly, depending on where you measure it. Here for the Taurus, it's about 2.2, 2.1 or so, 2.1 and a half. It does narrow a little bit when you come up to this part of the grip, or if you're using the finger groove there, it's 2.1 or 2, and then narrows to 1.9. But in the fattest part, here it's 2.1, almost 2.2, 2.1 and a half. Let's move to from the trigger, kind of the middle part of the trigger, to where your kind of the palm of your hand or the webbing of your hand would go, and that on the M&P is 2.6 inches. It's going to be probably fairly similar here for the Taurus. So as you can see there, it's 2.7, so slightly longer, but really not that much. So they're very similar in really what you're grabbing from the back, the webbing of your hand here to where your trigger finger is going to be. So as you can see, just kind of a hand comparison there. I never did this, so I want to do it now. This feels obviously substantially smaller, and that's just the way that it is. So now let's do the width of the grips here. So more or less it's going to be about 1.3, and then kind of the white. Let's go do the width of the slide as well. It's 0.9, so it's less than an inch, slightly less than an inch, depending on where you grab it. If you take the safety that's on both sides, the thumb safety, it's more like 1.4. and that would be the widest part of the gun. If we're looking at the Taurus, the widest part of the grip here on the Taurus is 1.25, 1.26-ish, depending on where you get it. And that's because of this palm swell. As you can see, it gets wider here because that's where your palm is going to be, and you're going to grip it. So that's actually really nice. I prefer that. That's nice. As far as the width of the slide is concerned, it's 0.93, and that at its widest, it's thinner actually. The slide anyway is thinner than the M&P slide, but then again, if you take into account the safety here, it's 1.2. Actually, if you see the safety, it's fairly narrow compared to the M&P. The M&P is a much wider safety there on both sides. So taking that into account, it's actually a pretty wide gun. Other than that, it's very thin, but these are much more low profile safety. That's a much more low profile safety. For the last real measurement we're going to take is we're going to do the height of the guns. So at their tallest, I know I'm off screen here. I'll try to move it on. It's at its tallest here is about 5.4 inches, 4.6 inches. So almost coming up on 5.5 anyway. And with the M&P, it is at its tallest is 4.93 or so. So it's obviously a shorter gun, which we know. We can see that. We don't even have to measure it to know, but it's about 4.9 versus the 5.4 or so. So obviously the TX22 is a much larger gun than the M&P 22 compact, hence the compact. But depending on what your use for it is, you may like this one better. I prefer to use the TX22 better. We're doing reviews on these. As soon as they're live, we will link them up here. But they're not quite live yet, so you'll just have to wait for those. But I much prefer to shoot this one over this one, just because it's more comfortable, it's more fun, and I never really intend to use these for self-defense anyway. And so if it's just a kind of a plinking range gun, then I'd rather go with one that's more comfortable, more fun to shoot over one that isn't. And so that's kind of the reasoning for it. If you're using it for something else, by all means, judge it differently. But that's just kind of the lens we looked at it with.
Okay, so that just about wraps it up, everybody. Like I said, look for these reviews once they come out. Like, subscribe, comment down below, like Norm said, and we'll see you next time.